parts, we'll talk about how the upper limb attaches to the axial skeleton. That's via the pectoral girdle. Then we'll go into details about the upper limb. Then the lower limb's attachment, pelvic girdle, to the axial skeleton. And then we'll continue with the lower limb. Appendicular skeleton are including our limbs and their attachment points. The appendicular skeleton includes the pectoral girdle. These are the bones listed for each of these regions that we will then go into in more detail. Beginning with the pectoral girdle, we see that it's made of two bones, the clavicle and the scapula, or commonly known as your collarbone and your shoulder blade. The view of the clavicle is that it is flat, extending from your shoulder, moving medially as it goes anterior. When looking at a single clavicular bone, in order to orient them, you want to look for the wide, tapered end. That part will face out towards the shoulder, where the blunt end is going to be the more medial portion that goes against the sternum. When looking for the clavicle, you want to look for one side that is rougher. Notice on the upper image, we can see that it's much more smooth compared to this rough texture of the inferior view. That is because muscles are attached to the inferior portion of the clavicle. The proper way to just name a feature is to name the feature of the bone. In this case, we have two clavicles. There's a right or left, so you have to indicate which one. So in this example, the blue would be the sternal end of the right clavicle,
enjoy this.
or the green is the acromial end
Right?
of the right clavicle.
Me,
and we can see the same for the left. We have the sternal end and the acromial end of the left clavicle. For the scapula, to orient yourself, if you have the opportunity to have a scapula in hand or you have a bone box with you while you're watching this, you want to grab the part that looks like a handle. That will face posterior, whereas the smooth surface is going to face against the body. It's actually going to be on the back and it'll be facing the ribs. So in this view, we can see from this posterior view the handle and is going to face posteriorly, where the socket is going to face laterally, whether it's right or left. This case, this is the anterior view. It's a smooth surface. This surface is actually going to be against the torso. So if
we use bones and landmarks sometimes to find certain
against the
acupuncture
ribs.
points. But this video is very detailed. I like it.
In this image, we have a right scapula, so that's been inserted in the terminology portion. The list there on the left indicates the features that you need to know. So there is the glenoid cavity or glenoid fossa. That's going to form the cup of your shoulder socket. The acromion, also known as the acromial process, is actually the feature that you can feel on the top of your shoulder. The coracoid process, that is actually a little hook that goes right above the glenoid cavity. The spine of the scapula, of the right scapula in this case, is the handle that we referred to earlier. Then we have the inferior angle, that is the bottom pointy portion, as well as the medial and lateral borders indicated in blue and in green. And then finally is the subscapular fossa, which is the smooth surface that presses against the torso along just posterior to the ribs. Here are some images of the left scapula. Pause this and try to name the features indicated on the last slide. Here we see the glenoid cavity of the left scapula, the acromion of the left scapula, the coracoid process of the left scapula, the spine of the left scapula, as well as the borders, lateral border, medial border, as well as the inferior angle of the left scapula. Then finally the subscapular fossa. These are all the features color-coded to match, hopefully, what you were to answer earlier. On this image, we can see the coracoid process, the acromial process here. We can also see the acromial end of the clavicle. We can see the sternal end of the clavicle. We can see all of this is going to be the subscapular fossa, and we could see this would be our glenoid cavity. For the pectoral girdle, you should know the two features of the clavicle and what it articulates with, and you should know the features of the scapula and its articulations, as well as using the proper terminology when identifying these on an image. Now we'll move on to the upper limb. The humerus has a rounded head, and that's going to point superiorly. The rounded portion is going to face medially because that's going into the shoulder joint against that glenoid cavity. When we look at the distal end of the humerus, notice the scooped out end. That portion that has a dip into it is going to be the posterior surface. The features listed here on the left are ones you need to identify on the humerus. In this example, we'll use a left humerus. We have the head, the rounded portion in purple, followed by the anatomical neck, which is just at the rim of the head, which would be the end of the joint socket itself. There actually is a surgical neck that would be located here that's used obviously for surgical purposes, but the true anatomical neck is imitated there in a red line. Then we have more on this anterior surface, we can see in green a knobby portion known as the greater tubercle and a smaller knobby portion known as the lesser tubercle. And between them,
Y'all learn from, you know, hopefully y'all learn this stuff. Look out for more videos like this. I plan to do more educational videos on acupuncture and just the human body in general. And maybe some animal bodies too, because animals and humans are pretty close when it comes to anatomy, especially mammals. Trust me on that one. But hopefully you enjoy. Always leave a comment below. I will try to make these videos as educational as possible, but also as fun as possible. Right? I am fit and acupuncture physician. I love my job and I love trying to educate people and help people out. All right. So again, it's always good to learn. Learning never stops after you finish school. It's a lifelong lesson. It really is. It really, really is. All right. So I